Alright, as the title says, this is how to work out a turkey in as little time as possible in your sink. And this is how basically every turkey that you're going to get is going to be whole, of course. But this is how butchers get them, in the bag. You get them in a box, in the bag. They're always the same. They have to be bagged, basically. And you're going to want to take your chef's knife. Normally for poultry you want a smaller boning knife, but the chef's knife, the size inside the turkey cavity, the size gives you a little bit more leverage, as does the width of the blade. Anyway, just start to get it out. And a lot of people get intimidated because they'll just lift up and like they won't have a good set on the hooks. Just make sure that they're set in there, and if they're not, you can just pinch the inside and fix it. Gut bag fell out right away. Set aside the gut bag and the neck. I don't know if you can see that, but they're in the sink. Anyway, and then put it on the cutting board. This one didn't have too much water inside the turkey cavity itself. Hemoglobin, as they might say. But yeah, this method of putting the cutting board down is definitely risky, but as long as you keep the center of gravity close to the T here, you're fine. All right, so loosen up the wings. Just get them unstuck because they're going to be pressed up against the breast or tucked in. And actually, I will real quick pop off the. They're so big, dude. Turkeys just get bigger and bigger and bigger every year, I swear. That's probably not true, but it feels that way. And I remember working a truck, you know, where it's like hundreds of turkeys of all the sizes and weights, and you just know that someone somewhere is competing for the biggest one, and they're trying to like hand favors to the butcher or whatever. But anyway, I'm going to give these to the dogs. Only to the one that's not barking right now, but the other one will get it later. Normally, there's just not really enough meat on them, so you'll turn them into stock or give them to your dogs or what have you. Leave the wings on. Leave the wings on. They give you leverage when you're breaking the breast out later. Anyway, make a slit here. Doesn't really matter if you touch further in because there's so much space between their thighs and their breast. Who cares if you nick the meat, right? So just make that a little bigger. I'm using like the worst strokes possible just to show you in broad strokes what to be doing, but you can tear that one out. And then pop the hip joint, the thigh joint going into the hip out of socket. I think that was pretty clear. And I already mostly did it on that side, but I made it really clear there. Man, I could really use a new edge on this knife, but we'll make do. And then basically just put it up against the side, kind of work the knife in under the bone, and you can just, usually, you can just press down and follow that seam from that little cut that you made. But this one, it is just a little bit outside of that margin, and I'm going to have to follow along the cartilage of the back just a little bit more than I might otherwise. Repeat on the other side. Yes, this is terrible cutting technique. Let the record reflect. I'm switching hands here. Also, probably not the best cutting technique because you can always figure out how to do it from your dominant hand, but for the sake of the video and you lefties out there, here we go. Yeah. Like my left hand isn't practiced enough to even cut through the skin with any kind of confidence. Okay, finally, that's 2 legs. Now we're just going to flip her over. And it kind of depends on how big the bird is. I forget if it was like when I was really working a Thanksgiving counter. I forget what I would want to do first, but you can go either way. You can go from the bottom of the pelvic cavity up into the back, or you can cut in straight into the back here just a little bit and start to work through the wishbone. It's a little bit more difficult, I think. And so with smaller birds, you're a little bit more likely to get pin bones, like that'll mess you up. I'm just gonna do this. And now that the back is broken almost all the way up to the shoulder, there's only, I think, 1, 2 ribs left and then the wishbone. I don't really need the leverage from the wing anymore. Just take off the wings. Those are easy. You don't need to bother popping them out of the socket. This is probably the best angle from underneath as the bird would be standing up, but you can certainly start it from up here and just work in like so. And there I did pop the bone out just to make the joint easier to get inside. And I probably took a little bit too much off the breast there, but you're always going to get I think that's probably a tendon. Anyway, this is by far the hardest part, where the upper shoulders of the turkey meets the neck. This is always the hardest part. So just get in there and break some stuff. You're gonna get some spray, all right? You're probably gonna get some spray. Just live with it and try not to get it in your eyes, right? I'm being really careful here, but you can just grab the whole thing, pointy bones and all, as long as you just, I don't know, aren't kind of wimpy about it. You'll be fine. But yeah, look at this. You can see there's almost no margin for error. When you've done 100 of them in an hour, I mean, that's not possible probably, but when you've done 100 of them in a short amount of time, you can probably find this little joint every single time, but this is a pain in the butt to find. It doesn't stay open very well. Like, that's about as far as you can get it open. But yeah. There we go. Pretty much done. I'm just going to really force my way through this last one. One other thing I'll give you as a tip for turkey is don't remove any of the skin until right before you're preparing it for cooking. You never know where spoilage is going to hit, like when it's going to go fast. So just leave it on there, let it spoil out a little bit. And if you think it's bad enough, just take it off later. Pop out the, oh yeah, I sprayed myself pretty good. Oh, just a little bit on my chin. Most of the time, I think putting turkey backs into 3 pieces is probably good, just because they're so big. I almost just about punched a hole through my freaking finger there, but it's okay. No harm, no foul. Oh, so much muscle, so much cartilage down there. If you throw away the back of the turkey, you're a criminal, and you should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Jeez. It's not always like this. Sometimes you'll get kind of lucky and just punch through in one push, but you know, most of the time the back is going to be turned into the best gravy on the planet, so we don't really care about messing it up too bad. But we're pretty much done here. You don't have to break the back into pieces. The only thing, actually, I shouldn't give up, but I kind of want to give up. Mother. This one bone just doesn't want to go, so I went all the way around it. I should have done that right from the beginning. Oh well, my butcher instincts weren't really kicking in there. For video's sake, let's just try it. Almost dumped the entire plate there. All right, this is terrible. Don't ever do this, especially when you're on a shaky foundation. Now, see, I didn't do crap there. I didn't do crap. That little bone there just caught the entire thing. So okay, let's just forget this. If I wanted to, I think the best way to pop this back into another piece would be to lift this. It's not really a rib. I think it's like the side piece of the rib cage of the chest cavity. You want to either go underneath that and then through it, or just try to pop it out entirely. Anyway, I'm just going to stew those down into gravy. So don't need to make it that much smaller. The easiest way to separate out the drumstick and the thigh is to just feel it in your hand and then put your thumb wherever you feel the joint meeting, right there. Wherever you feel the joint meeting the other half of the joint. And you're not going to get it on the first try, maybe, but just make that first cut, get down in there, and you'll be able to see it a little bit. And then it just falls open. So from the outside, kind of imagining where the turkey's kneecap would be if it has one. I don't know. You just feel for the joint. And there you go. All right. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. All right, I guess I better show how to split the breast. I wasn't planning on cooking this whole anyway. Flip it over. Put your knife visually on the center line. There's nothing to feel here. There's a visual center line. And it's not going to be, I don't know if you can see this too well, but there's like a bloodline or something here. It's off to the side. We don't care about that. We're in the center of this piece of bone. So these two little white markings of cartilage and tendon connecting the tender are your visual guidelines. Dead center. And then push. And so see, my chef's knife broke through here. It doesn't matter that it went too early, that I didn't get it all the way over the lip. That's fine. It just, that it broke through it all is what we wanted. So I'm just a little bit to the right here. I'm going to reset my knife. You don't want to do this more than once, because then you'll start to end up with really bad slivers of bone. But once one reset is okay. And good for me, I figured out how to make the cutting board more stable. Once again, it's just barely out of range, for lack of a better term here. You know what? The holdup isn't down here. It's actually up here. It felt like it was down here at first. Trying to stand this up. Be really careful whenever your fingers are below or past a knife blade. There we go. That's a nice sound. Not quite dead center, but close enough that it doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to turn it around now. I think... Oh my gosh. My dog won't shut up. She's not taking the transition from being an inside dog outside dog very well. Good Lord, man. It's been so long since I worked with turkey. This is exhausting. I forgot. But you get into a rhythm if you do more than one. That's the only saving grace, is if you get into a rhythm, you do more than one. I think it might be good if I grabbed a serrated knife here and just sawed. Anything. This is basically a steak knife. Anything with a serration, you'll be able to. I'm going to stand it up again. Oh my gosh, dude, this is such a... Turkeys are kind of a pain in the butt, not going to lie. Normally, you'd want a cleaver for this, and you'd hit it hard. But I don't have a cleaver. This is a home kitchen. Not everybody's got the cleaver. Not everybody, you know, you want to talk about splash zone. Cleaver is going to give you a huge splash. Okay, and I ended up just breaking it with my hands, and that's okay. It screws up the tender here, because normally we'd want that little piece there, but in this case, the ends justify the means. And we finally are left with a split turkey breast. And I am literally sweating. Most of that's just because I've got my front door open and it's like 70 degrees outside. And it's hotter inside. But yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm turning off the camera with my nose, just so you know.